Oh, it started at Stork Tower and then made its way down the bike path at UCSB through the tunnel and then down Pardall, took a left, went past uh, our office, and then down to DP and all the way down to the end of DP to like the coal oil point.
Oh, cool.
Oh, Jonathan, Ethan says he's in the waiting room right now.
Yeah, he just appeared in there right now.
Cool.
Hi, this is Ethan.
Hey, Ethan. Okay. So with that, we're going to call the meeting to order. It's 5:35 p.m. I'd like to announce the meeting is being recorded. And Jonathan, can you do roll call?
Whoops, I'm on mute. Director Brent.
Yes, or here.
Bertrand,
Here.
and Director Geis.
Here.
Before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge the Chumash people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place Anaskoyo, the land that Ilovs sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. Okay, so I'm going to open the public comment period. Are there any members of the public here who have matters that they'd like to speak about that are not on the agenda? Okay, then with that, we're going to go to the first item, which is the Community Budget Priorities Survey. And I know our staff and interns have worked hard to get this in order so that we've got a report on what the answers were. So I'll hand it over to you guys.
Yeah, I don't have much to add besides what was in the report, but what it does is it goes through each question, and it shows you like a data representation of what the answers were, and then kind of gives an analysis of in a narrative of what was noticed. So it gives you both. I think we got some great results, and I think we got a lot of great information. Seems like everybody liked going through the survey results, but yeah, I mean, as you can see here, like a music festival, for example, was the #1 suggestion for other community events. Well, we're thankfully already working on that. Infrastructure, I think, was one of the more popular ones to have answered, and again, I think it really informs what our thinking would be on a lot of our projects that are ongoing right now, like the transportation grant and the lighting plan, and talking with the county about the sidewalk improvements with the ATP. The housing disputes, I think, is an interesting one too to delve into, just because of how diverse some of the answers were. And the conditions of the housing, I think, also are pretty stark, the answers. But yeah, I mean, I guess at this point, I mean, that you have the report, but is there anything you all had questions specifically about?
I didn't have any questions, but I thought it was a good report. And I thought that one thing that was really striking to me is the question about the C-Click Fix app and just how many people had not heard of it and hopefully took the opportunity to go and download it just from the survey, which I thought was a positive development, but also just highlights the fact that we do need to do a better job of getting the word out about these things. And I'm excited that our budget, I think, addresses that in a lot of ways with some of our new staff positions and programs. So that was my biggest and most unambiguous takeaway from budget survey. Any other discussion on this?
No, I think that, even in the downtime where, people weren't here, getting this baseline data to continuously ask these questions as part of the budget, it'll be kind of interesting to see how it evolves.
Yeah, that's a good point. Looks like we got to bring Ethan
I think
back
so
in.
too. I think it'll be good for us to ask the same questions year after year, or a very similar version of these questions, so that we can see how it changes over time. Because I feel like that'll help us get more context to if our efforts are making an improvement, or if we need to focus our resources in other places. So Ethan says he is in the lobby. Or Ethan, were you able to make it back in?
Yeah, I'm back in. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, if there's nothing else on that, then we can go on to the updated estimated actuals.
Great. There's not much of an update here. We haven't had any major changes in our revenue or expenses based on the last time we presented this. So yeah, this would usually be just a chance to update on any major changes, but there haven't been any.
Have we gotten any new checks in as far as helping us project our revenue?
No, they come on the 20th.
Okay. Okay, well then let's go ahead and just dive into the draft recommended budget.
Great. So there's a couple things still with the budget that are in flux. We do have the revenue from last month already in from April. So, but I think we reviewed that already at the last committee meeting. I think it had just come in back then. So no changes there. But Ross's report that he had shared with us from CSDA showing average utility user tax reduction in the state kind of matches us. We're pretty much about the same, maybe a little less. So we'll see how it goes going into the summer. A lot of reports say that Isla Vista is maybe a little more populated now in May compared to April, and so that could have a factor on our revenue. But it's still an unknown. But it doesn't look like it's going to go down in a major way. It's looking like it's holding pretty stable. So unless we'll see what comes in on June 20th, but May wasn't a 50% drop at all. It wasn't anything like that. It was 20% or 25% at the most for one of them. So, and with the some of these always drop around this time anyways. So we'll keep an eye on it, but nothing, no major changes in revenue. In terms of the tax, the actual major change in revenue is the 22,000 income from rent from suite. I don't know the suite number. I think it's 202, the one above our office where Ivy Youth Projects is in. Since that's not going to continue after July 1st. So that's reduced to 142. I don't have any new word from UCSB or the clinic. Hope to have that soon. But going back to the UCSB contribution, the 200,000. Again, I don't have an official word here, but the word I've gotten from different stakeholders at UCSB is that it doesn't look like this will be cut, the commitment. But again, that's just from people who've participated in the budget discussions and not the budget office themselves. But that and mainly used to fund public safety programs at UCSB or with UCSB departments. So I could cross our fingers that we're gonna be okay over there. Yeah, so that's that. I should not have had this 30,000 in the parking line item, since that's not really real yet. But I think I was just playing around with this when I put it in, since there is a lot of opportunity right now for us to be able to get a grant from either the state clean mobility project or from another potential grant for parking and transportation needs assessment and planning and studies. So that's around the number we'd be able to achieve. But I it should not be in the recommended budget. It was just for me to see that. But that's that's what we're thinking. And I know that last budget cycle it was brought up, if we wanted to budget money for grants we'd potentially get. And so we're starting to get to that point where we can predictably think about grants we might have in the next year. Besides that, that's the revenue. There's no other changes. Does anyone have any questions? Moving to expenses, again, there's not a ton of changes, but the one I'll work through some of the ones there are. So the first is an added cost to our administration line item program, which is the cost of the election for the board this November. And so that's $14,000. It pays for the 2 questions on the ballot, which are the 2-year seat as one, and then the other 2 4-year seats count as one together. So 2 questions cost $14,000. And I guess that puts it in our head what in the future our election costs will be if we ever did put anything on the ballot besides our board members. It's about $7,000 a question in the November general election.
So Jonathan, just to confirm, having the different terms up in the same cycle, like the 2-year and the 4-year, that doubles the cost?
Yeah, because they're considered 2 separate questions.
Good to know. Wow.
Yeah, and that's how I was able to estimate the $15,000 cost, because when I had guessed it last time, is because IVRPD always has elections where there's 4-year seats and 2-year seats up from people who've resigned from the board.
Right.
So that's about what they've paid when they've had the 2 questions. So
okay, got it. Thanks.
It does double the cost. It does. It's a double cost. And that's an estimate too. We won't actually have a final number until December after the election's over. But they provided this official estimate to us, so we can make our.
If someone new is successful in the election, when do they take their seat?
It's like the Friday. Well, actually, they've changed it now, but it's one of the Fridays in December.
Okay.
It used to be the first, and I think it's changed now.
It's whenever the election gets certified, which the election keeps getting certified later and later because there's more time for people to send in their ballots now.
Yeah. So we'll need to we'll figure that out separately of when we have our first meeting with the new board members, if we do have new board members. And this is not maybe a good thing to happen, but if it did happen, let's say of the 3 seats that are open, 3 people run, then there won't be an election. The candidates will be appointed in lieu of an election, and then we wouldn't have to pay anything because there would be no candidates on the ballot. So it's maybe not the best thing for democracy, but it saves $14,000. So that's the only major change in the administration line item. Is there any other questions in this section of the budget? Okay. The next section is the community programs. Again, community programs as a whole is about half our budget, or a little less than that. The community center. So like we've talked in the past, we're going to budget the full cost of both staff positions, but we won't hire one of them until midway through the year. So that'll be a savings, but I think it's good to have the full cost realized in the budget, so we don't have to change it dramatically next year when we do add the full cost. So those numbers haven't changed. I actually just a couple hours ago, I hadn't been able to look into it and transfer the information into this budget, but I just got the expense information for the buildings in terms of utilities. And so I'll be able to start getting more real numbers in here. So again, it's just been a meeting after meeting kind of day. And I just got the information. So we'll have that soon. But again, just to review what these rest of the items are for the community center, since they're all new items. One, utilities is utilities, and it's for both buildings. Maintenance is like the regular maintenance throughout the year as stuff breaks and needs to be fixed on a daily basis. It's not actually daily, but on a routine basis, that kind of maintenance. Furniture and fixtures is any kind of equipment and furniture and we need for both the buildings to make them up to par for use. Grant writing is to help us go after grants that we can match our reserves with, so that we can have lots of funding come in for improving the spaces. Programming and events, again, this is the standard budget from this year that we had for any events, and again, we don't know how much of this will even be able to be used for the next few months. Property insurance is a requirement in any lease we'd enter into for the buildings. And then the last one, which is a big one, is $100,000, which is, I think, the single largest expense in our budget, is for long-term maintenance investment into the buildings. And so this is also, this is not the full cost of any improvements we'll make, but it's our yearly, I guess, contribution towards that. We will need to use our reserves, our capital reserves, to make other improvements, but that wouldn't be coming out of our annual operating budget. But what we would put into our budget is this 100,000 long-term maintenance commitment. Any questions on the community center? It's I guess the most complex part of this budget. Okay. Going down, everything else here has stayed the same. The special projects, Survivor Resource Center, Community Garden, Compost Collective, and Community Festival. None of these have changed. The housing item also has not changed from the last time we reviewed it. The public safety do have an update here, which is the interpersonal violence investigator and the safety stations. Those costs will not be changing. So the recharge rates on CSOs and on Covina's position won't change. And, I'll just share really quick that we had a great meeting yesterday on the goals and future of the investigator position and how we can best utilize that budget. And so we'll go back to the board with that. And then we're talking about the safety stations tomorrow to more in depth.
So Jonathan, that's great to hear. One question, just since the board discussion about the safety station was perhaps expanding to a third location and just having room to do that. Do we anticipate that with the current level of funding we could do that, or because I know we've underspent, but would it be recommended that we put any additional funds to make that possible?
Yeah, well, I'll need to. I'm talking to them tomorrow about that, so I'll figure out more on what will, can we shift people around to make it work. We underspent this year because of COVID, but I think if it hadn't been for COVID, we would have hit 57,000 or very close to it. And then again, this one is it's one of the ones funded by UCSB, and what we're doing with the safety station, we're using some of our old money that has been given to us for them, plus the new request we'll make this year. And so that could be another way if we say, okay, we'll take the full 200,000 this year if it is fully available, plus our reserve of UCSB money. That could end up with us getting a bit more funding to do more here. So I'll know tomorrow what that might cost. But I do know that the cost per CSO has not changed. So
Okay, thank
if
you.
you did want to keep the 2, it'd stay at 57,000.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah.
So Jonathan, the other side of that is on the interpersonal violence investigator, did you have discussions about our contribution in light of COVID?
Yes, but I guess it's not really pertinent to this agenda item, so I don't want to share about that kind of stuff right now. But we did talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah. And then community policing is unchanged, and so is the social media intern, which had kind of came out of the community policing. And then someone I'm not remembering which director had suggested maybe we use some of our kind of community policing for like additional training, and I don't know if for law enforcement, but I don't know if you'd want to split that up into a separate line item or keep it as just general community policing and then work it out later in the year. So that's that one. Moving down, parking study unchanged. Beautification. Emily Allen does have some ideas on how we can expand and get additional funding also from the Workforce Development Board for this program. And so we're still working on that, and that contract's not even up to change until maybe later in the summer. So we also haven't fully spent this line item. I think we'll end up spending like 50 to 60, not the full 70. So we might have room to grow while not increasing the budget. So, but I'm still working on this. The lighting, infrastructure, sidewalks, street trees, gutters, 50,000 unchanged. Public art, 5,000 is unchanged. And then community plan is reduced down because that was the board, the committee's direction was to, as we're trying to make the budget work, if we had to reduce anywhere, it would be this new area that does not have anything ongoing that we can reduce spending on. So this budget ends us with a net financial impact.
Hey guys, before you get off that,
and
hey Jonathan.
Bob, you're frozen for me.
Am I frozen?
Now you're not.
No, I'm not. Hey, just a couple of comments. So one, since if we get these buildings and we do have money budgeted for, infrastructure, like 50,000 for lighting, sidewalks, street trees and gutters, and then we have money budgeted for a parking study, we may want to think about, using our buildings as maybe demo sites about how we could work with Public Works to improve, the lighting around our building, because the consultant says it's, deficient. And then he also talked about solving, maybe our zoning problem with parking by maybe somehow being innovative in how we could do some, just parking on our own property. And so maybe we can, tap into these budget items as, kind of like demo things, just, because we don't have anything specific yet, but we might be able to get some good immediate results. Anyways, just a thought.
Yeah, no, that's a good thought. And that's what a lot of our budget items are general for that reason. So we can keep figuring things out year after year. Okay. But I guess the last point I want to make is, even though we say we have a positive, 7,000 net financial impact, my recommendation would be to not allocate that at this point and to continue to monitor the revenue as it comes in. And then, if revenue comes very normal and all that on June 20th, we can then start looking into funding for this, additional money. And if it comes in lower, It's just less we'd have to reduce in other areas. It'll just eat 1,000. And yeah, any other questions or suggestions or direct, anything I should be researching or looking into to keep making changes to this?
I think
I would just say, I think it's fine if we just leave that 7,000, regardless of what the June financial statements look like, just out of an abundance of caution, and because it's such a small amount of money that I can't imagine there's anywhere that we could plug that in that would make a substantial difference. And then if it ends up being, net surplus, then we plug it back into the reserves.
I'm good
Yeah.
with everything.
I agree with that. And I think this reflects where we've gone with our committee as well as the board feedback that we received. So nice job.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't see many other next steps with the budget besides keeping, taking into account the expenses on the buildings that are, based on the actuals now, and any discussions I have with UCPD on the safety stations, and then discussions I have with IV Beautiful on that program. I think those are the only three last threads to firm up before we this on June 23rd. And I'm sending in the notice to the Nexus and Independent hopefully later tonight or tomorrow morning. So we'll be officially voting on our budget in 3 weeks from now. 4 weeks from now. I'm doing my math wrong. 3 weeks? Yes, 3 weeks. Never mind. My bad.
And as we get closer to that 23rd date, we always can make final budget adjustments at the meeting. So
true. And actually, on that point, I would suggest that our next finance committee meeting is not 2 weeks from now, but is actually something like maybe like the Friday or Thursday before the board meeting, just so that I think the Friday will be the day we get the revenue numbers. And so we could probably have a better sense of the right before we finish our recommended budget to the board. So what do you all think about that?
I'm flying back that day, and
Oh, right.
but I should be back by noon, and so the only thing I have to do is go get another COVID test after I get off the plane.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea if we try to do that sometime in the afternoon, because I imagine if we're coming in at the same levels that we have been, then we won't really have anything to adjust. But if we've got a significant decrease in the numbers, then we may have some adjustments to make. So
yeah,
just as a last ditch effort in case we have to make adjustments.
Yeah, and I think Bob and I have this conversation separately in terms of, what if it's fall and our like totally collapses because there's no one living in Isla Vista since the school is still totally remote. We'll just have to make adjustments and changes and be okay with having to be flexible in 6 months from now, 4 months from now. But as there's nothing to tell us that our revenue will be dramatically that much lower so far. So the emptiest month, quote unquote, like April, did not show like a huge decline. So if things stay April level, we'll be okay. And like we've mentioned before, the majority, not the vast majority anymore, but still the majority of our budget is not ongoing staff costs or anything like that. So if our revenue did go down dramatically, we wouldn't necessarily need to cut ongoing services. We just reduce the, general pools of money that we use to make, one-time expenses.
Hey, what do you guys hear?
Absolutely. And go ahead, Bob.
Well, what do you guys hear from UCSB about fall quarter?
It sounds like it's going to be a hybrid, probably mostly remote, but some on-campus instruction for things that can't be done remotely, like lab work. That's what I've heard the most, but I think most of it'll be remote.
But there's no like, let's bring all the freshmen in and make everybody else do remote, so that none of that kind of talk.
I think they're still very much figuring that part out.
Yeah, gotcha.
I think they're figuring it out too. Well, the one thing we can be pretty sure of is that on-campus housing is not going to be tripled up like it has been in the past.
Right.
Which can have potentially a wide range of ramifications for us in IV.
Oh, meaning more people would go to IV so they could not use on-campus housing?
Potentially, yeah.
It's possible. Like we just don't really know. We've never been in a situation like this before, and it had been talked about in another meeting that we should do an assessment, a survey, or a poll of IB residents to see what their plans are for the fall. And I think we should still do that, but we're waiting for mid-June when we're expected to hear from Janet Napolitano what the campuses are going to do.
Yeah, and just some like anecdotal evidence, like I've noticed, it looks like landlords are thinking the summer will be extra empty, but then not the rest of the year. Like I've seen, huge discounts for leases in July and August, but then only those 2 months, not beyond. So maybe we might have an impact. Our revenue is already lower in the summer. Maybe it'll be a little lower. Maybe. So.
Last thing I'll mention on revenue, I know we got the CSDA projections that showed the moderate decline for UUTs, but keep in mind, I think most UUTs are probably disproportionately borne by like industrial uses and commercial uses. And we have a lot less of that in IV. Most of ours, I think, is borne by the residential uses, which are still in use. So I think that we're in a good shape in this budget. I'm confident in it. And I'm extra confident because we do have the very healthy reserve to fall back on and other areas of one-time spending that is new that we can roll back if need be. So I think we're in a really good shape. I think excellent work, Jonathan, on putting this together. And we'll wait and see what comes in those revenue statements.
Thank you. Yeah, we're almost done with this one. It's the big one.
Any public comment on any of these items? Okay. In that case, if there's anything else that the committee has, or if there's not anything else the committee has, we will adjourn the meeting, and we'll have our next meeting to take place on June. Well, actually, no, we're saying not June 2nd. We're saying June, what is it, 5th or 6th?
Yeah, one of those. Oh, not 5th or 6th. It's June 20, but probably. Or 19th.
20th.
Sorry, 19th.
Oh,
19th.
Okay.
My bad. I was doing the calendar wrong.
Yeah, I think I was too. Yeah, so we will see each other back then for one last look before we send it on to the board, and encourage everyone to join us for our budget hearing in June on the 23rd. Looking forward to your participation. So with that, anyone have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All right, made by Bertrand, seconded by Geis. Do a roll call vote.
Oh, sorry, I'm getting cut off a bit. Director Brent,
Yes.
Director Geis,
Yes.
and Director Bertrand.
Yes.
All right, thanks everyone. We'll see you soon.
Guys.
Thank you. Take care.